Today, I'm going to talk about bioenergy as it relates to Public Service Commission Resource Adequacy Docket 2022.09.087, initiated by Commissioner O'Donnell. The Greek word bio means life, and the definition of bioenergy is stored chemical energy from the sun produced by plants through photosynthesis. It's a great concept, biosources, and they are domestically available. All countries have it in various forms. There is evidence that mankind has used bioenergy for millennia, from the time we discovered fire and used wood for cooking, heating, and as a light source. Bioenergy sources include wood, vegetable oils, and alcohols, peat and algae, and also organic waste such as feces. I'm going to first talk about the use of solid biofuels. Peat or peat moss, as it's found in natural peat bogs. That's a photo of some peat moss. Peat is made up of multiple layers of partially decomposed plant remains and is formed over thousands of years when abundance of water plus absence of oxygen affects natural processes of decay. Burns hot. It is notable that peat is considered the earliest formation of coal. If wood and peat are considered biofuels, it would seem logical that coal might be called a biofuel as well. Biofuels in the home. Burning wood, feces, and peat is not clean, as you might imagine. It is the poorer, undeveloped countries that use solid biofuels. Sometimes coal that is subsidized, but more often it fuels that can be gathered locally, such as wood, agricultural wastes, and animal dung. For Africa and much of South Asia, not a lot has changed in 40 years regarding solid fuel use. The African continent accounts for about 50% of the solid biofuels consumed worldwide, with 82% of its inhabitants, or around 900 million people, relying on it for heating and cooking. In sub-Saharan Africa alone, roughly 95% of the population depends on biomass in the form of fuel wood, charcoal, and residues. That comes from the International Energy Agency in March of 2022. About 3.8 billion people, nearly half the world's population, cook with solid fuels. This is a photo of a woman cooking with dung. You can see how smoky that is. Indoor cooking with solid biofuels is extremely hazardous to health, as you might imagine. One estimate made was 2 million people die per year from household pollution, 44% from childhood pneumonia, which is the #1 cause of childhood death worldwide, 54% from chronic obstructive lung disease, and 2% from lung cancer. That is not to mention the fire-related and carbon monoxide-related deaths from indoor cooking. Dung is also used in more developed countries. There was a headline in May of this year: oil refiner leans on manure to provide a greener future. This is a quote from the article. This pungent cargo will be mixed together into a slurry and pumped into massive tanks where hungry bacteria will, within weeks, turn it into methane gas that will ultimately be sold to the energy grid to heat homes and generate electricity. Notice the functional fuel is methane gas. If it is true that petroleum and natural gas come from ancient dead plants, might it also be logical to consider them to be biofuels such as peat is? The word bio again means life. Are coal, petroleum, and natural gas any less qualified for the term bio than crushed dead corn or seeds. Now I want to talk about liquid bioenergy. Ethanol is the prime example of use in this country. We have a lot of land with very fertile soil. In this country, bioenergy through ethanol has been promoted in times of crisis, times of great need, such as the Great Depression and the energy crisis of the 1970s. For some background on ethanol as biofuel, it's a $168 billion industry. The United States and Brazil are the largest ethanol producing countries. Nearly 40% of corn grown by U.S. farmers is used for fuel, and that involves close to 100 million acres for this purpose. Over 93% of ethanol used in the United States comes from corn. Bioenergy as ethanol is included in many strategies to reduce anthropogenic greenhouse gases, emissions, and limit the magnitude of global warming. Will forms such as ethanol, forms of bioenergy such as ethanol serve these laudable goals of saving the planet? This is an article published February 14th, 2022 in a periodical called The Environmental Sciences. We find that the production of corn-based ethanol in the United States failed to meet the policy's own greenhouse gas emissions targets and negatively affected water quality, the area of land used for conservation, and other ecosystem processes. Here's another article published the same year in Scientific American. Claims by industry that biofuels deliver greener transport have been battered by a relentless flow of reports. Indeed, the first generation biofuels that are the market leaders seem to be little better for the climate than fossil fuels. From the same article, that counterintuitive outcome is a result of farm operations involving diesel-fueled tractors and fertilizers made from natural gas. The fertilizers release nitrogen oxide, a greenhouse gas that is nearly 300 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Even farm soils can release stored carbon that is essential to their resilience and fertility. Worse still, the increase in demand for biofuel crops has extended farming into marginal lands, damaged biodiversity, and increased water use and contamination, as well as pushed up the price of agricultural commodities and thereby exacerbated food insecurity. Are there other concerns about the use of ethanol for bioenergy? How about the politics? The business model of the ethanol industry is federal government forcing consumers to use ethanol. It is manufactured demand, not true demand. It is therefore not free market capitalism. It has created a cycle of dependency for the industry. It pits farmer lobbyists, states, powerful public and private interest groups, various political groups, and other industries against each other. How about subsidies and mandates for ethanol? The Renewable Fuel Standard was created by the Energy Policy Act of 2005. Renewable Fuel Standard of 2007 requires transportation fuels sold in the United States to contain certain quantities of ethanol. The ethanol industry lost its main federal subsidy at the end of 2011, but it maintained its mandate. Then the subsidies came back in 2022 when the IRA provided production and investment support for biofuels estimated at $9.4 billion. The latest ethanol Environmental Protection Agency mandate. June 21st, 2023, the EPA announced a final rule to establish volume requirements for total renewable fuel for 2023 to 2025 for our fuel supply. An increase of 250 million gallons for 2023, a 600 million ethanol gallon increase in 2024, an increase of 790 million in 2025, for a total of 22.33 billion gallon increase of ethanol use. Ethanol is less energy dense. What does that do? Decreased energy density means decreased efficiency, means fewer miles per gallon, means ethanol mixed with gasoline per gallon will not get you as far as gas alone, causing some to believe ethanol blending with gas raises the net actual cost of American transportation. Are there other downsides for ethanol? Specialized storage tanks and pipelines are needed. The higher the percent of ethanol, the more corrosive to rubber and other engine components. Nitrogen fertilizer washing off cornfields can pollute waterways. Rich farmland is used for biofuel rather than for food. The multiple downsides of ethanol cause many to consider, could its ongoing and escalated use be due to the benefits for special interest groups that don't include we the people and our environment? We hear a lot about biodiesel and renewable diesel. I've seen this where these two terms are interchangeable, and then other places where they're different in processes. It's another use of bio that makes us think positive thoughts. But as far as I can tell, biodiesel has the same concerning aspects as other liquid biofuels. They both generally use vegetable oils and leftover sludge, as well as animal fats. Corn and various seed oils require extensive mechanized processing to get from seed to usable fuel oil. Including a lot of petroleum, petrochemicals, and land. Other concerns with vegetable and seed oils. Headline: the everyday ingredient that harms the climate, about palm oil. This is from a periodical called Toward Net Zero, published October 28th, 2021. From this article, if we ended the use of fossil fuels tomorrow, we would still face huge challenges in stopping climate change, in no small part because of one very common household ingredient, palm oil. Oil palm is not native to Indonesia, where most of this is produced. Oil palm prefers dry lands, therefore requires widespread deforestation and extensive canals that uproot peat bogs and animals, like these beautiful orangutans. Other downside of liquid biofuels. Headline: this was Bloomberg, March 21st of this year. Shortage of cooking oil looms as biofuels gain global appeal. And what about shortage of food? So back to bioenergy and as it relates to our resource adequacy docket. bioenergy industry would have you believe that biofuels bring a tremendous benefit to the environment and economy, solving energy shortages and combating climate change. However, if a thinking person was not making money off bioenergy and weighed the alternatives, would they consider bioenergy to be truly a way to solve any of these problems? Thank you.